Where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. In the swamps of Louisiana, the nights don't belong to humans. They belong to something that wears the shape of a man and the hunger of a beast. They call it the Rougarou, a curse passed through blood, sin, and broken promises. And once it chooses you, the hunt has already begun. The night is not empty. In the deep, black waters of the bayou, beneath the gnarled and weeping arms of ancient cypress trees, something stirs that does not belong to the world of daylight. It is a shape woven from shadow and rumor, a breath of chill air in the humid southern night. They call it the Rougarou. To speak its name is to invite a whisper back from the darkness, a rustle in the palmetto bushes that is just a little too deliberate, a pair of reflected eyes that vanish before you can be sure they were ever there. This creature is the soul of the Louisiana wetlands given a fearsome, furred form, a lesson carved in tooth and claw. It is the embodiment of a warning, a story told to children to keep them from wandering too far when the moon is full, and to remind adults that the wild places still hold laws older than any made by man. Our journey begins in the thick, perfumed air of the swamp, where Spanish moss hangs like tattered grave cloths, and the water moves with a secret, silent purpose. Here, the line between animal and man, between nature and myth, is terrifyingly thin. The Rougarou does not merely live in this landscape. It is the landscape, the consequence of broken promises, the price of forbidden knowledge, the guardian of thresholds we were never meant to cross. Listen closely. The chorus of frogs and crickets has just faltered. Something has entered their domain and they have fallen silent in homage or in fear. To understand the Rougarou, we must first walk the cultural crossroads that birthed it. Its story is not a single thread, but a tapestry woven from the old world and the new. Its deepest roots sink into the rich soil of French folklore, from the windswept coasts of Normandy and Brittany, where the loup-garou, the werewolf, was a very real terror. These were not mere beasts, but cursed humans, shapeshifters paying for a sin or suffering under a witch's hex. When French colonists, Acadian exiles, the Cajuns, were cast out from their homes and washed upon the shores of Louisiana, they carried this fear in their hearts. But here, in this new and overwhelming land, the old stories mutated. The European wolf did not thrive in the subtropical swamps, but the essence of the shape-shifting predator found new hosts. It fused with the potent beliefs of the Native American peoples, like the Choctaw and Huma, who knew the wilderness as a spiritual realm filled with animal guardians and tricksters. Perhaps, too, it brushed against West African traditions of shape-shifting and forest spirits brought by enslaved people. The result was a uniquely American ghoul, the Rougarou. It became less a cursed man and more a wild spirit of the place itself, a guardian of the murky waters and impenetrable woods. Early Cajun communities, isolated in their bayou settlements, saw the Rougarou as an explanation for misfortunes, disappearances, and the eerie sounds of the night. It was a social deterrent, a folkloric enforcement of Lenten piety, for legends said that breaking the fast for 7 years would condemn you to become the beast. Thus, the myth served multiple masters. It explained the unknown, enforced religious and social order, and personified the very real dangers of a hostile, magnificent environment. The transformation of a man into the Rougarou is a descent not just of flesh, but of spirit. It is rarely a clean, cinematic shift under a full moon spotlight. Instead, it is described as a slow, agonizing corruption. It begins with a fever, a heat that comes from within, drying the throat and making the skin feel too tight. The afflicted person seeks solitude, shunning human company, drawn inexplicably to the edges of the swamp. Their senses sharpen painfully. The scent of damp earth becomes overwhelming. The rustle of a possum in the leaves sounds like thunder. Then comes the ache in the bones, a deep, resonant pain as if the skeleton itself is trying to reshape itself, to curve the spine, to elongate the jaw. Hair, coarse and thick, pushes through sweating skin. The teeth loosen and reset themselves into predatory fangs. But the true horror is often internal, the human mind receding, not vanishing, but being submerged beneath a tide of primal instinct, rage, and hunger. The victim is aware, a prisoner behind their own eyes as their body commits atrocities. Some legends say the transformation is permanent until the Rougarou draws blood, upon which the curse passes to the victim, and the original bearer is freed. Others claim it lasts for 101 days, a period of purgatorial wandering. The most chilling accounts speak of a voluntary transformation, sought through dark pacts or forgotten magic, where a person seeks the power of the beast to enact vengeance, becoming not a victim of the curse, but its willing master. This duality, the unwilling monster and the deliberate predator, is what makes the Rougarou so complex and terrifying. To live in the Rougarou's domain was to live by a code of precautions, a folklore of survival etched not in law books, but in communal memory. Protection began in the home. A common safeguard was to scatter flaxseed or salt around the perimeter of one's property. The Rougarou, compelled by its obsessive nature, would be forced to count every single grain before it could cross, a task that would hopefully last until sunrise, when its power waned. Iron, especially in the form of nails or knives placed under dorsals, was a potent repellent, as it was for many fairy creatures of the old world. The most significant practice was the strict observance of Lent. For 7 years, one must not break the fast, or the curse would take hold. This tied the myth directly to religious and social conformity, but encounters were not always preventable. If you were pursued by the Rougarou, the key was not to outrun it, but to outsmart it. Legends say that if you could draw its blood, even a single drop, the creature would instantly revert to its human form, shamed and revealed. Some tales advise leading it to a crossroads, places of inherent magical ambiguity, where its power fractured. And then there were the healers, the traitors, who possessed the knowledge to lift the curse through prayers, herbs, and rituals known only to them. These practices paint a picture of a community in a constant, subtle negotiation with the invisible world, using symbolism, faith, and folk wisdom to maintain a fragile barrier between their domestic light and the chaotic, hungry dark of the wilderness. One of the most persistent and haunting tales is that of Jean Bergeron, a trapper who vanished from his pirogue for 13 days in the winter of 1883. When he stumbled back into the village of Des Alemans, he was gaunt, his clothes in tatters, and his eyes held a distant, feral glaze. He spoke in a hoarse whisper of a beautiful, haunting light deep in a cypress grove, a will-o'-the-wisp that led him off the known channels. He followed, he said, because within the light he heard the sound of a woman weeping. Deeper and deeper he went, until his boat grounded on a hidden bank. The light vanished, and the weeping changed into a low, guttural growl. He described a creature taller than a man, standing on 2 legs but shaped like a monstrous wolf, its fur matted with mud and algae, its breath steaming in the cold air. It did not attack him immediately. Instead, it circled him, studying him with an unsettling intelligence. For over a week, Jean claimed, it shadowed him, sometimes stealing his catch, sometimes howling from a distance to keep him awake and terrified. It was, he insisted, hurting him, preventing his escape. He was only freed, he said, when he stumbled upon a Native American burial mound and took refuge there. The creature would not approach the sacred ground. Skeptics said Jean had simply gotten lost and suffered from exposure and hunger. But the people of Des Alemans noticed that thereafter, Jean never went into the swamp alone, and he would always leave a portion of his catch on a particular log, an offering, he said, to the guardian of the deep woods. Not all stories paint the Rougarou as a mindless predator. In the labyrinthine waterways near Lafourche Parish, a different kind of legend persists, that of the protector. The tale is told of a small settlement plagued not by a beast, but by a band of ruthless thieves who would raid the isolated homes by boat. After several confrontations left the outmatched villagers wounded and robbed, a strange pattern emerged. The thieves' camp, hidden deep in a mangrove choke, would be found destroyed, boats splintered, supplies scattered, and the men themselves found miles away, clinging to logs, babbling about a devil of the swamp. The only tracks left behind were large, canine, and bipedal. The raid ceased. Then, one bitter winter when the water line dropped unusually low, a child wandered off and became lost in the vast marais. As search parties floundered in the gathering dusk, a deep, echoing howl rolled across the wetlands, not a threat but a beacon. Following the sound, they found the child, asleep and unharmed on a dry hummock, surrounded by a ring of large, peculiar tracks. Beside the child was the fresh carcass of a large alligator, its neck broken. The villagers felt they were being watched by a grateful, if inhuman, presence. This Rougarou was not a cursed human, but something else, a spirit of the territory itself, enforcing a rough justice and protecting the balance and those who respected it from greater evils. It was a guardian, its ferocity a tool for a purpose beyond mere hunger. The physical form of the Rougarou is a masterpiece of adaptive terror. It is not a simple wolf, nor a mere man in a pelt. It is a hybrid forged for a specific environment. Typically described as standing 7 to 8 feet tall on its muscular, digitigrade hind legs, it possesses the raw power of a bear and the lean, coiled tension of a large canine. Its body is covered in a shaggy, water-resistant pelt, often matted with mud, algae, and leaves, a perfect camouflage for the swamp. The color is said to range from a dank, mossy gray to a rotten black, sometimes with a reddish tinge around the muzzle and forearms, as if stained with iron-rich water or old blood. Its head is wolf-like, but the skull is broader, the intelligence in its burning amber or sickly green eyes unmistakably more than animal. Its jaws are capable of crushing bone, and its teeth are long, yellow daggers. Its arms end in hands that are disturbingly dexterous, fingers that are too long, tipped with cruel black claws capable of rending wood or flesh with equal ease. It moves with an unsettling grace through its domain, capable of silent stalking through shallow water, powerful swimming in the deeper bayous, and explosive, leaping charges on land. It is said to smell of wet earth, decaying vegetation, and the metallic scent of ozone before a storm. This is not a creature out of place. It is the ultimate predator of the wetland, every aspect of its anatomy honed by the landscape it is said to embody. The intersection of the Rougarou and the complex social fabric of Louisiana has bred unique and chilling variants of the myth. Among the Creole communities, particularly those with stronger African diasporic influences, the story sometimes intertwines with notions of the Boko, a practitioner of folk magic. Here, the Rougarou could be a scent creature, a familiar of terrifying power, summoned to punish an enemy or guard a practitioner's secrets. It was less a cursed individual and more a supernatural enforcer. Another grim tale from the antebellum era whispers of Rougarous that were not natural at all, but the tormented spirits of enslaved people who died in the swamps while attempting escape, their rage and longing for freedom twisting them into bestial forms that would forever haunt the places of their suffering. In more modern, syncretic interpretations, the Rougarou has even been tentatively linked to the Vodou Lwa spirit of the crossroads and cemeteries, Baron Samedi. Both are masters of boundaries between life and death, the civilized and the wild. These variations reveal how the myth served as a vessel for different cultural fears and traumas. It could represent the terror of supernatural revenge, the haunting legacy of historical injustice, or the dangerous power of esoteric knowledge. The Rougarou's shape, it seems, could shift to fit the darkest corners of any community's psyche. As the 20th century progressed and the wilderness of Louisiana receded before roads and levees, the Rougarou did not vanish. It evolved. It migrated from campfire tales into popular culture. It became a mascot of sorts, a symbol of regional identity stripped of some of its terror. The New Orleans professional hockey team bears its name. It features in comic books, B-movies, and fantasy novels, often as just another monster in a menagerie. Cryptozoologists have included it in their catalogs, speculating about undiscovered primates or surviving prehistoric predators. This modernization has, in a way, tamed the myth, transforming it from an immediate local dread into an exportable commodity of cool. Yet, in the remote bayous and small, insular communities, the older, darker belief persists. There are still those who will not go fishing at night during certain moon phases. Elderly traitors are still sought for protections against the dog. The Rougarou's journey from folkloric enforcement mechanism to pop culture icon mirrors humanity's own changing relationship with the wild. From a place of immediate danger to be appeased, to a conceptual space of adventure and mystery, and now, perhaps, to something we realize we have lost and mourn. The modern Rougarou is caught between these worlds, a toothless logo on a t-shirt, and a very real whisper in the back of the mind when the lights go out and the swamp sounds close in. What then does the Rougarou ultimately represent? It is more than a monster story. It is a narrative embodiment of the threshold. It guards the boundary between the village and the wilderness, between the human and the animal, between the known and the unknowable. It represents the consequences of breaking social and natural laws, of ignoring the fast, of wandering too far, of harboring a bestial rage within oneself. It is the ever-present what if of the human condition. What if the civilizing forces that hold us in check were to break? What if the wild world we have pushed back were to come roaring back with a familiar face? The Rougarou is that repressed wildness, given fang and claw. Its persistence in the cultural imagination, even in sanitized forms, speaks to a deep, primal understanding. We know on some level that we are not so far removed from the beasts. We know that the darkness, both in the forest and within our own hearts, is real. The Rougarou is the teacher of that harsh lesson. It is the shadow that moves just beyond the firelight, the price of forgetting our place in the older, grander, and more dangerous order of things. It is a myth that insists the world is not fully tamed, and perhaps should not be. So the next time you find yourself near the wetlands, as the sun dips below the horizon and the chorus of night begins, pause for a moment. Listen beyond the frogs and the insects. Feel the ancient weight of the place. The stories we tell about creatures like the Rougarou are not mere fiction. They are the echoes of our deepest anxieties and our most profound respects. They are maps of the psychic terrain, warning us of the precipices within and around us. The Rougarou may be a myth, but the swamp is real. The fear of the dark is real. The wildness that stirs in the blood is real. Perhaps the true power of the legend is not that it creates a monster to fear, but that it acknowledges a truth we often ignore. We are and always will be part of the natural world, subject to its laws and capable of its savagery. The Rougarou is that reminder, a shape in the mist, a pair of eyes in the dark, a story told in a whisper. It ensures that no matter how many lights we string, how many roads we build, a part of us will always know that the wild is waiting, patient, and eternal, and it has many forms. And on certain nights, when the wind is right and the moon is full, you might just remember to look over your shoulder and wonder what else remembers you. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.